Hello everyone, this is Dr. Lashik, and in this lecture we're going to talk about how to complete the discussion section of your paper. When you think about your discussion section, this is basically the part of the paper where you're summarizing everything you found in your research, and you're summarizing the whole paper and then expanding on that, talking about it further, speculating on what the conclusions that you drew from your paper might mean in the real world and why. As you can probably recall, the previous parts of the paper were as follows. The literature review talked about why you were doing the research you were doing, the previous research involved in that, and basically justifying why your hypothesis is probably correct. The method section outlines how you will or have already completed that project. The results section then takes the numbers that you found, your data, analyzes it, and then discusses what that means, so any findings and conclusions that you can draw from that. And then the discussion section elaborates on those results even further, talking about what could have been improved, what future research should do, and what your results really mean, but just in words, and elaborated on in more detail. So what I've done here is I've given you basically an outline for how you should set up your discussion section of your paper. Discussion sections can be any length. It can be very long or very short. For this class, yours should probably be between 1 to 3 pages in length total. In fact, I've outlined it so that you can actually just fill in 5 different paragraphs of information here. As you can see, I have information for paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now you can split those paragraphs up into smaller paragraphs if you have a lot to say, but as long as you include at least one paragraph of information for each of these bullet points, you're probably in pretty good shape. So let's talk about what we would like to see in your discussion sections. In paragraph 1, you're basically going to summarize everything that you've already talked about in your paper thus far, but in really, really short, succinct way. The very first thing you're going to write is what was your original hypothesis and why you thought that. And so that, of course, was what the entirety of your literature review is. How do you boil that down into one sentence? Well, that's a good question. You're going to start by saying something like the hypothesis for the study was ... and the reason that it was thought that this was the hypothesis was because there was lots of research out there that suggested this to be the case, and cite a couple of previously discussed articles from your literature review. This does not mean you have to go to PsycInfo and find more sources. In fact, you're just going back up to your literature review section and finding information that suggests or justifies why you have the hypothesis that you do. And since probably all of your sources did that to some degree, you want to pick and talk about the few that really, really stood out as being the main ones. So maybe if you're doing your research on sleep and anxiety, you found 2 papers that talk about the relationship between sleep and anxiety. Those would be excellent ones to cite in this quick synopsis sentence. This again should be only about 1 to 2 sentences. The last sentence or last couple of sentences of paragraph 1 should just be a repetition of the results that you actually got from your results section, but without the numbers. So in the results section, you're actually looking at the data and then coming to conclusions based off of that data. In the discussion section, it's assumed that you've already read the results, and so now you're just elaborating on those results in words. And so here you're just going to say, okay, we've restated the hypothesis, why we thought the hypothesis was the one that we stated, and then what we actually found in basically one sentence. So if you found that sleep and anxiety were related, you would say something like, the results for this study discovered that sleep and anxiety were related. In paragraph 2, we want to elaborate on those results even more. So we want to talk about, is this what you expected? Is this what you didn't expect? How do your results agree or disagree with the previous research that you included in your literature review? So if every source you found on sleep and anxiety was that they were related, but when you actually run the results and the data analysis, you find that they aren't related with your data. You would talk about that here. You might say something like, well, all these different researchers came up with the fact that they're related, and unfortunately it was discovered with our research that these two were not related, variables were not related, and talk about why you think that might be. Basically what you're doing is you're just connecting back to the different sources that you talked about in your literature review and discussing why they are parallel or contradict one another. In paragraph 3, we're going to start talking about the different validities, so how we can make future projects on these topics better. And so, of course, we're pretending that we went through a whole research project where we had lots and lots of data, and we didn't cut any corners, when of course, since this is a class project, we did a lot of cutting corners, especially with how we got our data. So we might not have had enough, for instance, and with our survey it could have been improved quite a bit. And so paragraph 3 talks about how the survey might have been improved. So we want to discuss any strengths and weaknesses of how we measured our variables. And of course, there's probably only one question that was used to assess each of our variables in this class. And so you have to look at those and decide if A, they're properly worded, B, if that was enough information, asking one question about how much sleep you get per night, is that enough to really assess someone's sleep? So you're asking yourself all these questions about the survey and how we measured our variables for construct validity, and at least offer 1 or 2 ways that that could have been improved, even if you think it was really good. In paragraph 4, very similar to paragraph 3, we're going to be assessing external validity. And this means, does our sample generalize to the population of interest? So it's here that you're going to have to discuss who the population of interest is, and then who our sample is, and whether or not you think that truly represents our population. And again, just like with construct validity, how could we have improved that process? And we just had a whole lecture on sampling and how to do that correctly. And so talk about a few ways that we might have been able to improve our external validity with this research. In paragraph 5, you're basically going to wrap everything up by talking about future research. If your research turned out to be not significant, you might want to talk about ways we could have improved our research methods for this project to have gotten significant results. If it was significant, so if you found that sleep and anxiety did correlate, maybe you could talk about instead future research projects on these topics that might expand the knowledge in the field, such as, okay, well, we've discovered that there is a relationship between sleep and anxiety. Perhaps there is also a relationship between sleep and stress. And so you can go anywhere you want with that, as long as you're offering some good ideas about how to either have improved the study that did not work or was not significant, or things we could do in the future if our study was significant. As always, please email me if you have any questions about this, and I'll see you all later.